There are so many people available to you who can be resources to you.
It's a much larger group, so you get a lot more information.
As a voluntary, not-for-profit initiative.
Your needs and meet them by finding the right place in the right environment.
I'm now going to introduce the next of our speakers, who's an academic, and he's currently the project director of a recently instituted Coordinating Secretariat for Science, Technology and Innovation, Sri Lanka. And he's an alumnus of the University of Moratuwa and read for his PhD at the University of Cambridge in the United Kingdom. And he's also entered the realm of management because he has an MBA from the Postgraduate Institute of Management, PIM, of the University of Sri Jagadnapura. But of course, what he does with at the University of Moratuwa is interesting. Also, his expertise is sought after in the commercial realm as well, should we say the corporate sector as well. And his involvement in all of those helps him to know what the marketplace is about, what is required, and certainly how you as an individual, as a student, might be able to consider how you can contribute and be part of those things. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Professor Ajith, the Alwis.
Thank you, Ivan. This is maybe the very first time you said this. For the first time you speak about yourself, as it's usually the teachers we talk about all up to you. And I thought I will give you some advice with some experiences that I face, and hopefully you will take some of those learnings. As all those speeches before me and after me to come, there are a lot of good points that you need to take up. You need the power of the point. What you see there is, I just stressed the title, that is learning to serve. I suppose that's what you heard from Sanjeev and the others, that carrying the flag, it's very, very important. You do get educated, but we must do a serve. Serving is very, very critical. It's probably the need of the hour now, because charity begins at home and stays at home is not very good, right? It's very, very important that we start thinking about the outside. And as students, I just want to stress, because you're heading into a challenging world, the figure on one side has the sustainable development, maybe too deep to you right now, but I have put one value there, 400 ppm. I'm a scientist or engineer, and so 400 ppm is the carbon dioxide concentration that the world's passed in May for the first time. And the last time the world recorded that number, or the model, now you didn't really record, we were not there to record it, was about 2 to 3 million years ago. And the human beings were not there at the time. So very interesting and very worrying. So we recorded this value in Hawaii, in the northern hemisphere. And on the other side, you're aspiring to be, or sort of looking at higher education. So it's complex times, it's challenging times. You need to be fully equipped to handle this, and you must have your values. So with that, if you get a postcard from Nelson Mandela, he will stress on education. Mind you, it's not only higher education. When you're up to this point now, maybe your worldview has kind of formed because you're past 14 and so on, and your ideas are so much gelled, and you have got your inputs, your thinking, you have your ideas. So it's higher education, is icing on the cake in a sense, but you have to get it right. But education is of paramount importance. And this education doesn't mean carrying certificates, no taking the photograph with the certificate and putting up in the Facebook. And it's much, much more than that. So we get tuned to the style these days, but not perhaps the substance. So as students, it's very, very important to think substance is much, much more important. Not exactly how we wear things, but how much you know, how much knowledge and wisdom you carry, and your intentions of serving. So this is what the fundamental thing Nelson Mandela, the great statesman, would say. And it's a postcard, it's actually the postcard. I just want to briefly stress on this as it's fresh. This was stress, you must do what you like. But of course, within that value set. Otherwise, there are maybe a lot of things that you would like to do, but they're not acceptable, right? So in that sense, it's very important to try to look at, try to select, and try to do or act in areas that you have a feel, you have a passion about, you have an interest. And then, please read. Please read, discuss, think. Don't just succumb to peer pressure. Don't just succumb to what my neighbor has been doing or my friend has been doing. Or he's getting a big salary. So what is he doing to get that big salary? So I must do that. Don't think. And think prior to select. So do a good bit of background work. Also in line with what your mind says, what your heart says, and what your brain dictates. And as you read more and you get more, probably your thinking also will get much more enriched and better. So please read. And I stress read what? Because reading habit is a disappearing act in the Sri Lankan context. It's in the world context too, but I suppose more so in Sri Lanka. So read biographies. I'll take one example, time permitting, to stress on one fact. Because we are extremely lucky these days, but unfortunately, we don't exercise that luck. We still feel that we are victimized. We still feel that we don't have enough. And that's not quite right. So I'll give you one example, just to keep that in mind. We can be world class. Sri Lankans can be world class. Dan was spot on in that sense of saying that. But we have the recipe. Today the science has also yielded that recipe to us by studying world-class people. I wish I knew this secret a little bit before, but you still have time. But you have ample time. And please take that note as well. So I'll tell you what that secret is. So aim of education is a meaningful life. And thanks to the IT revolution, you can be a Sri Lankan elsewhere too, and serve the country. It's been elsewhere, but not lowering the flag, as it was said, is very, very important. Unfortunately, we do that. There's a very interesting statement I heard in India. I spent some time in India. I heard that you can take an Indian out of India. You can take an Indian out of India. That is, I can move out from India. Indians will go. But you can never take India out of an Indian. That India is always in the heart of the Indian. And I sometimes feel in Sri Lanka that even Sri Lankan has not left Sri Lanka, the Sri Lanka is not in the heart of the Sri Lankan. And you feel that. Because this is the only country in the world, in a sense, we declare the paradise and invite people, while most of our people want to escape through boats. So whoever have ever heard of escaping the paradise in the most difficult way imaginable? So think about it. Last one, resource constraint is a myth. That's what I said about luck. I'll come back to that. So please, if you have read the English book or the Sinhala translation, Alice in Wonderland, Lewis Carroll had a fantastic sentence. If you don't know where you're going to be or go, any road can take you there. So very simple yet profound. So please have your directions. You should have in your mind, I want to do this. And I want to do this in a way so not only it helps me, but I can help the others at the end of it. So that should be fixed in your mind. And having a direction at young age is very, very important. So please think about it. So my life, in a way, very briefly, I was very happy with the subject of chemistry. And so I had a small lab at home. I had two things at home. I had a private library and a laboratory. Buying beakers, billets and so on. I remember parents bought few things. I was mixing things, chemistry. And I had it called Royal Laboratory and Royal Library. Don't ask me why Royal. I come from Ananda. But I suppose it's a book of the Royal Society. Anyway, it was Royal. I know because it's what I did. But then, a chance remark, another book I read at British Council changed the direction. I was more fascinated with big industry. You do chemistry on the bench scale, but you can't help people through the bench scale. You can get the idea, invention, but you need the innovation. It has to come out in the open. Just imagine we have a headache, you have paracetamol. Yes, there's science that can give you paracetamol, but the scientist can produce 1 or 10, 100 paracetamols. But the rest of the lakhs of people are having headaches. I can't buy that. I can't serve. So the industry serves people. Unfortunately, in Sri Lanka, we have really worked against industry. It's time we learn this very fast. It's very, very important. But unfortunately, we have not learned. We don't see these factories. So I was very fascinated by chemical industry, which I know is the cornerstone of the today's quality of life, including penicillin, including any of these fertilizer, all these things. If you do bad, that's your value system. It's not the fault of the industry. It's the fault of some of the people who are within that. So don't take your act or don't take your revenge against something that is serving you. It's important. So I switched in that. So I ended up looking at how can I do chemical engineering. Of course, I had the choice of Peradeniya Moratua. I took the Alwis, but I was searching for chemical engineering, and big from Ananda, I went to Moratua one day and saw that in the applied science, chemical engineering is there at the time. It's not in the engineering. So I opted to do applied science, trying to do chemical engineering. Today, of course, it's in engineering. So it's University of Moratua, where I come from, and today we have this, the building, and we are having 80 students. So very happy to have been part of this system from the undergraduate, then graduating, then taking a scholarship, or rather realizing a scholarship through the learnings I received on this place, and then going to another university overseas, and then coming back and doing some changes to that too, and continuing to work with it. So it's engineering. If that's an aspiration that one has, today this is very, very broad. And unfortunately in Sri Lanka, we have this shift. If I have a chance to scrap something, the first thing I would scrap is the biology to medicine and maths to engineering. I would make all subjects, because today biology is going to be very, very important in 21st century engineering. The bioengineering, tissue engineering, which is what is biochemical engineering, biomedical engineering, is changing the world. And unfortunately, by polarizing two groups, we have not realizing the benefits. That's something fundamental Sri Lanka should do right now. But engineering is about design and creation, creativity. So this is one of our students in one of our industries on top. So uses science and technology and build things and add value and give you products and so on. And that is what engineering. And of course, engineering is for the benefit of people. Chemical engineering also is very proud to say that it helped in taking the physics and then coming out for the nuclear energy. But if I use the nuclear energy principles to build a bomb, that's a value system. If I use the nuclear techniques to have in medicine, agriculture and so on, that's again the value system. But that's the direction we should check. It's not blaming the nuclear energy. It is how we use it and how we ensure that not only I get a benefit, I get others and the society. So what types? There are so many engineering types, right? As I said, it's a very vast field. And again, within that, you should look at what? And I know of a student who was very passionate with the environment, specifically with birds and so on. The entire ecology, the biological side. And we heard a similar story. And these students selected civil engineering. Even within selecting civil engineering, he selected to do irrigation engineering. Why? The birds get attracted to the water bodies. So he can be an engineer, he can be a civil engineer, he can be an irrigation engineer, and he can still study and observe his passion in environment. He recently published a book on butterflies in Sri Lanka. Now that's a civil engineer. So you can always create a niche. Even in any field that you do, you can create. So if you happen, where I differ sometimes is, you can be pushed into a field, but yet you can then transform the field the way you want to take that field forward. And that is how sometimes the field, not sometimes, that's how the fields get enriched. So think what you like and think what I can create with what I am doing. So don't feel that you have been unfortunate corner. Don't think like that. Try to use your interest. If you can't do what you like, change the field that you are doing and improve on it. There's always that opportunity. So that students is an example, a very fantastic example. And we had another one else. So engineering is about creating value for people. And that's why the world is different today. And then as I said, so I read biographies, and you should too. So two things that comes to my mind when I was looking at chemical engineering, of course this was a little later, but the Jack Welch and Andy Grove. It's very interesting. Andy Grove is a chemical engineer. Jack Welch is a chemical engineer. Jack Welch is considered the Professor Emeritus of management in the last century in a sense. And he has done so much to management. He did a polymer PhD, heat transfer coefficient, calculating mathematics. So if you ever don't allow an employee to ask, what have you done, what's the use, you must have a creative answer, the use of your knowledge. That is because you're thinking how to apply. So Jack Welch, now Andy Grove is quite famous. I mean, both are very, very famous. Andy Grove is the co-founder of Intel, semiconductor processing and so on. So read biographies. So that's how we have looked at Sri Lanka in our department. We have said you should be nationally relevant and globally focused. While you serve, don't get into a corner and allow yourself to move away from the world. Be relevant, but focused about serving the country. And the field can be exciting. That's what we say, from potato chips to microchips, from microchips to biochips, the neural world will come. Analog, digital, neural may not be far away. From banana fibers to optical fibers to carbon to the fuel cells. And it's all within what we say as chemical engineering, or it's working together. It's not just one field. So you can make the field exciting. Don't ever make the decision, as I said, based on the salary. It's not the right decision. If you ever base your decision on the money, then you can bet that it's not the right decision. So I had the postgraduate in Cambridge, and then it was also interesting, scanned this yesterday night. My area was food, and I had a paper which won the best paper ever published for that year in the institution, so you got a gold medal, and I can use that as a solid gold. And when the money is not sufficient, probably at some point to melt it. And then also that same period, that technology won the technology of the year in the food industry. So it was all about electrical heating of foods. So it's interesting, but the interest is back home. Coming back with a Spark station in modeling, you hit a 5.25 disk here in the country at the time in 1992, right? So you had to do something different. You can't ask the Spark station, I want to do food process modeling. No way it's going to be applicable here at this stage. So initial fashion was nuclear, was energy efficiency, did food engineering, did modeling, then came back, handled garbage, and still doing that in solid waste. So even that is not getting solved. So that's a testament to the efficiency, right? So did an environmental composting, biotechnology, even worked on nanotechnology, and now national policies. So written about 3 national policies, right? So don't trust those policies. But the point is, the higher education that you get is about think, do, learn, self, and so on. Self-learning is very, very important. Don't get discouraged that this is not my field. Don't bother about it. Get yourself and the attitude, that's important. I'll very quickly look at, we have our students, so it's passion to teach the students, and good to see them going. This batch, more than 60% is overseas now. One of them is in Cambridge. You can see how much of papers he has written, right? So he's proud to see that, but he's not going to come back, right? But the point is, like that, we need to get work in Sri Lanka. It's also important. So don't think resources limited very quickly. This is one child in a century ago had this issue. He was served this much bread, and you have to use 2 pieces and for the week. That is how much the mother gave him. And you now walk into a supermarket, go into the candos, get this thing, and however much you are further away, you still have more than this amount of bread. And he had no science education. He left the school at grade 8, and it's very fast, the red light. So he studied, he came up with all these things. He identified, discovered all these things. Any student who want to tell me who this person is? That is why he's Michael Faraday. So don't ever feel that we don't have resources. So it matters is attitude. So one final thought, please take this very seriously. Diane was mentioning this, but not the rule. I'm an academic, I'll tell the rule. This is coming from now neurobiology. You as students, if you're very passionate about a subject, any subject, if you can throw in 2.5 hours a day, I put 2.7 because the rule is 10,000 hours or 10 years. You work diligently, passionately, there is always the world class with that too. And this is shown with Tiger Woods, to the Williams sisters, to the Mozart, who was a young prodigy. The 10,000 hours were there, and Diane was talking about that 8 years. It's very interesting, right? So you have the ability to don't spend time in front of the TV with Run Depire class. Don't waste your time away and cry yourself alongside the TV. It's not going to get you anywhere. So thank you. You need to give back. You need to give back, and you will have to fight in Sri Lanka a little bit. This is what the papers once put, the dons turned donkeys. Sri Lanka has a habit of saying those who come back, those who are in Sri Lanka is second class. That's also there. So when somebody wrote, the editor embellished it with a cartoon, put in the cap, and then said this is dons as donkeys. You have to go through that, you have to understand and change the perceptions. That is your challenge too. So yes, we can is our motto at Moratua, our student group, and we are also proud that before Obama said it, we said it, right? So we didn't copy it from Obama, this was before Obama. So this is my last slide, and I suppose all of you can read it. And this is very, very true. The nation recognizes, the nation feels that you have been there. If you have done some service, back to that. Otherwise, it's not there, it's not recognized, it's not felt. So thank you.